Hello dear learner, I welcome you to the lecture 5 of week 4 and the topic of today's lecture is Theories of Revolution. So before I go into the details of today's lecture, I would like to present before you the brief introduction about the topics to be covered today. And here, as the name suggests, we will cover Marxist theories of revolution, and in this we will study about 7 thinkers, but in brief. The first is Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, second is Karl Kautsky, then V.I. Lenin, Joseph Stalin, Leon Trotsky, Antonio Gramsci and Mao Zedong. Now to begin with our first thinker or the main thinker on whose name the entire tradition of Marxism or Marxist theories that have come into being is Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Now, Marxist theories of revolution have produced a detailed analysis of the social conditions and dynamics that have produced revolution. We have already seen in our previous slides that how Marx has made an economic understanding of the various reasons of social injustices and exploitation in the society. And therefore, or in this lecture, we will see in much more detail how he has given an economic interpretation about the causes of revolution and how by the overthrowing of the economic structure of the society, we can establish change or we can establish a new structure and also bring about transformation. So, after their name, we have come to know the Marxist school of thought. Now, Marxist theory of revolution draws on 2 important principles, and this has been highlighted by Brian Aaron. First is a philosophical view of the world which has been called dialectical materialism, where there are 2 processes involved, one is dialectics and another is materialism. First of all, it means that we have to understand the movement of social development or history in terms of matter, or the matter is continuously in action, and second is that matter is moving through a process which is known as dialectics. And in our earlier slides I have explained that dialectics is a process which consists of 3 important steps. First is thesis and then is antithesis, and out of these 2 comes out new matter or which is known as synthesis. So, it comprises of 3 processes, or it is a process by which the matter moves in the pathway of social development. And the second important principle of Marxist theory of revolution is that it provides an economic analysis, and that economic analysis is not only about the stage of capitalism, but about any period of economic system in history, which lays down bare the inherent contradiction in class society and thus show the necessity of struggle and eventual revolution and change. So, by making a study of the various stages of history, he has showed that how at each stage we find the economic system of the society is divided into 2 classes, and how those class antagonism is followed by class struggle, and after that it leads to a revolution and change and transformation and finally establishment of a new society. So, therefore, now we will understand in some detail how this change actually takes place. Now, in every period of human history, we find that there are certain relations of production, and that is determined by the ownership of means of production. And it has been found that almost in every period of history where there is private ownership of property, it has been found that it has been unequally owned by different classes. So, therefore, we find that in every stages of history where there is ownership of private property, it has given rise to 2 classes, one is the haves and another is the haves not. Now, changes in the mode of production, which includes technology, or it may be development of new skills or development of new knowledge or equipment, it brings about changes in the nature of classes, but not in the class itself. The class maintains, but the name or the nature of the class changes. So, Marx further argued that changes in the nature of the classes itself occurs by social revolution, when the changing material forces of production comes into conflict with the existing relationship of production. So, basically he understood the process of change by two methods. One is by understanding the means of production or forces of production, and second is by understanding the relations of production which are already existing. And when they both come into conflict, then it leads to a sort of change or a sort of transformation in the society. And the new class which owns the new means of production overthrows the old dominant class in the process of revolution. Now, capitalism though increased the productive capacities of society, led to rise of impoverished proletariat class, thriving with minimum subsistence wages and subjected to exploitation. As we have already seen in our earlier lectures, where I have explained that how capitalism thrives on the basis of division between two classes, one owns the property and other only the labor which can be sold in the market, and how this proletariat class, it becomes impoverished because they are getting very subsistence wages or very minimum wages, and therefore they are subject to numerous forms of exploitation. And increasing surplus value is appropriated by the capitalist, which leads to rising antagonism between the two classes, thus generating its own forces of destruction. We have also seen these things, and we have already discussed it in our earlier lecture, that how as the capitalism grows and expands, the value of the profit also increases, but all the benefits are acquired only by the capitalist, and the proletariat, it gets very little out of this change or out of this profit, and it leads to more exploitation of the proletariat, and therefore there increases rising antagonism, or you can say rising conflict, which leads to revolt or which leads to rise of protest by the proletariat. So, therefore, he said that capitalism contains the seeds of its own destruction, and therefore Marx believed that revolution is essential for the emancipation of proletariat or humanity. He believed that since proletariat constitutes a very large segment of the society, so therefore if the proletariats are emancipated, if they are freed from exploitation, then the humanity will also be emancipated and they will also be freed. Further, Marx and Engels, they have specified two important conditions for the revolution to take place. The first is that full development of capitalism on a global scale. So, we find that in this sentence there are two important aspects. First is that the capitalism should be fully developed. That means it should be the case of a fully industrialized developed society. It will not take place in a backward society or in a agricultural society as per Marx. And the second, he said that it should be on a global scale, because capitalism, he believed, had spread across the world, and any revolt which will take place will also take place at the global level, because until and unless all the workers of the world, they unite and fight against capitalism, then only by destructing capitalism in one country will not be enough. And the second important condition, he said, that conversion of the proletariat into an effective revolutionary force, because until and unless the proletariats, they are not themselves conscious about their conditions, they are not aware about their rights, and they are not ready to fight against the capitalist, then there is no purpose of having a theory, or there is very less relevance of talking about change and transformation, because it is ultimately the proletariat which has to act and which has to work for the change and transformation. And he has basically described two important steps to bring about revolution. The revolution will take place in two stages, and the first stage is that it is the seizure of state power by the proletariats, who will then capture all capital from the bourgeois and transfer it in the hands of the state, or state will retain control over all the means of production, over all the capital which were previously owned by the capitalist. Now this is the first stage, or it can also be called the dictatorship of the proletariat. And the second important step will be eventually when all the modes of production will be in the hands of the state, then there will be erosion of the classes in the society, and if there is no class, then it will lead to the classless society, and finally it will lead to the stateless society, because state are nothing but they are the superstructure and the classes they form the base. So ultimately it will lead to the establishment of socialism. So we can say that there are two steps in the process of revolution, and the first step is that the proletariat will seize all the capital from the bourgeois and transfer it in the hands of the state, or there will be state control of the means of production, and this stage can also be called as the dictatorship of the proletariat. And in the second stage we will observe that once all the means of production are controlled by the state, then there will be erosion of classes in the society, which will eventually lead to the establishment of a classless and finally the stateless society. Now we come to another important Marxist thinker, Karl Kautsky. Now Kautsky was the leading member of German Social Democratic Party, who was greatly influenced by Marxist theory. Though he believed in the inevitability of revolution and the abolition of private property, but the revolution will involve a number of stages. He believed that the abolition of private property will take place, but in the process of revolution there will be a number of stages that we have to pass. After that only we can achieve the goal of revolution. He insisted on social reform. So in the meantime, when we are in our path to revolution, in that process we have to insist upon certain social reforms while moving towards the path of revolutionary struggle, so that the workers get some relief, and it will also speeden up the process of revolution. So in contrast to Marx, we find he favored involvement of workers in trade union activities and politics. So we can find an element of reformism in Kautsky in contrast to Karl Marx. He believed that if the workers are participating in trade union activities and politics, then it will help in bringing about the revolutionary change through the electoral means, and also increase the political effectiveness of the workers, or the workers will become more politically educated and they can use the means of politics to bring about change and transformation, or in other words, in the longer run they will move more closer to revolution. Now another very important thinker, Marxist thinker or political leader was Lenin. Now Lenin was a Russian revolutionary, politician and also a political theorist. He served as the first and founding head of the government of Soviet Russia from 1917 until his death in 1924. Now his revolutionary tactics played an important role in the Russian Revolution of 1917 and the subsequent establishment of Soviet Union. Now amongst his most important works are: first, What is to be Done, it was published in 1905, and the second is State and Revolution, which was published in 1917. Lenin believed that the revolutionary consciousness amongst the proletariats can be generated by an intellectual elite who will focus on the political aspects of revolution rather than the economic aspects. He believed that it is very important to raise the political consciousness of workers before the revolution takes place, and this can be done by the intellectuals who will teach the workers about the political aspects of revolution besides the economic aspect. Because he believed that in the class struggle, workers will develop only limited consciousness, and their political consciousness has to be raised from outside the economic sphere. Now I think this is a key element which is a very important feature of Lenin, which makes him different from Karl Marx. On this point, we find that there is a difference between Lenin and Kautsky also, who believed that there is no need to import the revolutionary consciousness from outside the domain of economic struggle. Lenin advocated for violent revolution, which will destroy the bourgeois state and lead to the establishment of democratic state, which will represent the interest of the proletariat. So, here we find that he is coming very close to Karl Marx, who has also advocated the overthrow of the capitalist state through a violent revolution. Now, further he explained that this new state will be democratic in a new way, because it will be democratic for the proletariats and for the propertyless in general, but it will be dictatorial also in a new way, especially for the bourgeois, from whom all the capitals and the property will be taken away. He advocated Communist Party to be the revolutionary vanguard who will play a leading role in the dictatorship of the proletariat. Now, a very important thinker is Joseph Stalin. Now, Stalin succeeded Lenin as head of the communist government of the Soviet Union and maintained his hold till his death in 1953. Now, one of the important difference between Karl Marx, then Lenin, and with Stalin is that Stalin abandoned the international dimensions of revolution, and instead he advocated the notion of socialism in one country. He propounded this doctrine in his work Problems of Leninism, which was published in 1926, which made a reinterpretation of Marxist thought. Now, what we mean by the notion which is the socialist pattern of society in one country without the necessary requirement of proletariat revolution in other countries. Now, this was a departure from the Marxist view on revolution, which believed in the international character of proletariat revolution. Now, the next important thinker we will study is Leon Trotsky. He was one of the leading theoreticians of the Russian Bolshevik Party and a leader in the Russian Revolution. Now, one of the important aspects of his theory of revolution is that he gave us the theory of, that is, permanent revolution. He explained how the socialist revolution can occur in society that have not yet achieved advanced capitalism, because unlike Marx, he has seen that in societies, for example, Soviet Union, now there was no advanced industrialism, so there was no proletariat class in the sense of the term in which Marx understood in the required number. So, he had to reinterpret Marxism to find out alternative solution to those societies where there is absence of advanced capitalism. And then he suggested that a revolution could survive only if it spreads to advanced capitalist country. Therefore, he said that it is not merely by adopting the revolutionary methods by proletariat of one country, but it should be adopted by the proletariats of all the advanced industrial country. He supported proletarian internationalism against Stalin's theory of socialism in one country. So, here also we find that there is an important difference between Trotsky and Stalin, and we find that on the one hand Leon Trotsky is talking about the proletarian internationalism, whereas Stalin is talking about the existence or the possibility of establishing the socialist pattern of society in one country. Further, Trotsky believed that without the direct support of the European proletariat, the working class of Russia cannot remain in power and convert its temporary domination into a lasting socialist dictatorship. So, by giving the example of Russia, again Trotsky, he actually reiterated that without the support of other countries or without establishing the socialist form of state or adopting revolution by other members of proletariat of other countries, it is not possible for the working class of Russia to stay in power for a long time. So, in order to convert its temporary domination into a lasting stage or the lasting socialist pattern of society, it is essential that the last remnants of capitalism should be erased across the world. Now, another very important Marxist thinker who has been influenced by Karl Marx but has adopted most of the philosophy of young Marx or humanist Marxism, or a Marxist who has understood the problems of society from cultural point of view. Now, let us first understand who was Antonio Gramsci. Gramsci was the leading Marxist theory of Italian communism, who served as the General Secretary of Italian Communist Party and was elected to Parliament also. His most important work is Prison Notebooks. Now, Gramsci believed that the Marxist tactics of revolution has to be reinterpreted in order to apply it to the specific circumstances of any country. So, it is very important to understand that we cannot straight away in toto adopt all the principles of Marxism across the countries of the world, but we have to reinterpret the Marxist theory according to needs and conditions of any society. Gramsci's major contribution to the revolutionary political thought was his development of the idea of hegemony and its implications for the process of revolution. So, by using this notion of hegemony in its multifarious dimension, he has tried to not only understand the ills of present society, but also how the revolution can occur by understanding or analyzing the notion of hegemony, and how the state which will be finally established will have to continuously ensure that it is taking this hegemony into account. So, therefore, hegemony is a very important idea in Gramsci's thoughts on revolution. He used hegemony to describe how state and ruling capitalist class, the bourgeois, use actually cultural institutions to maintain power and dominance in capitalist society. So, hegemony means dominance, and here he is using that how the bourgeois is using the cultural institutions or the ideas to maintain its hegemony at the level of idea over the proletariats in the society. So, therefore, he suggested that most of the time in Western democracy, the hegemony is based on consent rather than force, using various organs of public opinion like newspapers and associations. So, here there is not much scope for going into the details of Gramsci idea, but I am just presenting the brief outline of what he has said. He has said that now there are two types of hegemony. One is the hegemony by consent and another is the hegemony by force. Now, hegemony by consent is actually built by various institutions in the society, by various means in the society, like newspaper, then association, then books, publications, etc. Now, for revolution to occur, the hegemony of bourgeois is to be challenged by the proletarian counter hegemony. Now, this counter hegemony has to be built up consciously, it has to be built up deliberately if we want to challenge the hegemony of bourgeois. Hence, he rejected the deterministic explanation of revolutionary change, because by the deterministic explanation we mean that the reasons for or the causes of revolution are already predetermined, and here in the case of Karl Marx we find that it is in the economic relations or in the economic system of the society, whereas Gramsci argues that only the existence of inequality or existence of class or class division or class struggle in the society does not normally or automatically gets translated into the revolutionary zeal. For the revolution to occur, we need the counter hegemony or challenging the hegemony of thoughts and ideas or the narratives of bourgeois at the level of ideas also. For him, the revolution is a process rather than an event. So, for most of the thinkers, we can say that for them the revolution is a one-time experience, but for Gramsci it is a continuous process. Counter hegemony can be developed by interaction of intellectuals and workers within the framework of a revolutionary party. So, therefore, he has also given the importance to the party in the process of revolution. Even after revolution, the state power will be used to transform the social relations of production and to develop further the cultural hegemony of the proletariat. Therefore, now we can understand why he has said the revolution is a continuous process. He has highlighted the ideological and cultural elements in revolution rather than the economic elements as highlighted by Karl Marx. Now we come to our last thinker, that is Mao. Now Mao was a Chinese Marxist theorist and political leader who led his country's communist revolution. He was the leader of Chinese Communist Party from 1935 till his death. He was the chairman, chief of state of the People's Republic of China from 1949 to 1959. So we can say that he was not merely a theorist, but he was also a political leader, a statesman, and also an activist. Now he argued for adapting the Marxist principle to the Chinese condition, especially when he was engaged in political and military struggle against a range of enemies starting from capitalism to feudalism. Now since China was industrially backward, so there was no proletariat. Hence he focused on the revolutionary potential of rural mass or peasants. Mao considered the importance of the Red Army as an instrument of revolutionary change in China, but he emphasized that it should work under the control of party. So along with the Communist Party, he believed that the role of the army is also equally important in bringing about revolution. He gave a very famous statement that power grows out of the barrel of a gun, because he believed that all things grow out of power, and all that power, it actually comes out of the barrel of gun. So party commanded the gun, and the gun must never be allowed to control the party. So party is supreme, but the party must have the power, and that power actually comes with having the army on its side. He believed in the revolutionary potential of peasants who need to be organized and led by the party. He advocated the guerrilla warfare method. People's government will bring about the revolutionary transformation of Chinese society, erasing all class distinctions, and permanent revolution will lead to the establishment of socialism. He emphasized the role of party and political leadership in bringing about this revolution. His emphasis on the democratic, autonomous institutions of people, strong army and party, and potential of human will are some of the points of similarities with Lenin, Trotsky and Gramsci. So at the end of the lecture, now I come to some of the questions which are based on the topics or the content which has been covered in today's lecture. First is, what are the important tenets of Karl Marx's views on revolution? What is Gramsci's hegemony? Write important tenets of the revolutionary philosophy of Mao. What was major difference between Trotsky and Stalin on revolution? According to Lenin, how the revolutionary consciousness could be generated amongst workers. And at the last, I have put forward some questions and I want you to think about this. First, do you think that this raising of class consciousness is relevant for raising the revolutionary potential of workers? Do you think that the revolution is best method for bringing about change and transformation? Can you relate Gramsci's notion of hegemony with present institutions of dominance around you? Explain with examples. Now with this, I come to the end of today's lecture. Hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you very much.